Now, how was the economy? Now, as I have said, that major of the economy was depending upon the pastoral sector. Okay, that is the rearing of the animals. So, but obvious, it was depending upon the natural resources available for the grazing of the cattle. Okay, whether the cattle were bulls, buffaloes, cows, okay, dogs, sheep. Okay, so or the horses. Okay, so here the cows and the horses were considered as the most important cattle. Cows were known as Go-Dhan. What is meant by go means cow. Okay, and dhan means the prosperity. Okay, the cow, Go-Dhan. Okay, the cow was considered as the prosperous thing. Okay, and the second cattle was the horse. Okay, now as we know that Aryans were the warriors and they used to ride the horses. Okay, so the horses were significantly used during this period. Okay, now whenever for having a good prestige of that particular kingdom, okay, the king used to have the Ashwamedh Yagyas and everything. Now that we would be studying in the later Vedic period, but here you need to know that the pillar of the later Vedic period has been created in the early Vedic period, and that is why cow would be considered as the significant prosperity symbol. Okay, and after that the horse was also being domesticated on the larger scale. The more number of cows with the farmer, the more prosperous he is in the social status. Okay, and that is why having the cows was considered as a prosperity. Okay, so here we have mainly rural and pastoral sector which is being evident. After that, we also find the evidences of the artificial irrigation. Now, before going towards the artificial irrigation, what is irrigation? What is meant by irrigation? So, irrigation is a kind of activity where we provide the water to our agricultural land in the artificial way, and that is known as the irrigation. So here artificial irrigation was being carried out. It means, can I say that the early Vedic period people knew the irrigation system, right? That is collecting of the water, storing it, or either flowing it for the agricultural purposes. So it tells us that they concentrated on the higher growth of the productivity, they concentrated on accumulating more wealth, right? They had started to accumulate more wealth. Why? Because if we see the mode of exchange, although it was the barter system, okay, now the barter system either was carried through the food grains or either it was carried through the Go-Dhan. Okay, but we'll see that they started the accumulation of the wealth, and this accumulation of the wealth is also evident through the taxation system which was being carried out during this period. Okay, so this was the nature of the economy during this period. After that, if we compare the economy of the latter Vedic and the early Vedic, so we will find very minimal, very minimal differences. Now in the early Vedic period, we had pastoral economy, okay, where the cow was given the significance. After that, the society was quite tribal, that is, they totally lived in the jungles, they followed the pastoral economy. Okay, after that they had some of the chiefdoms who overviewed and managed and regulated this rural economy. Now when we come towards more developed kind of economy of the later Vedic period, we had agricultural economy. That is, the man started again to have the settled agriculture as we saw in the Indus Valley civilization, right? So again the man started agricultural economy, a settled society where the group of houses lived or the group of families lived together in the single area. Okay, after that they also, now once the villages are created, the villages would be turning towards the town and the towns would be turning towards the city, and this were called as the padas. Okay, these villages were called as the padas, or the upgraded village or the towns and the cities were called as the padas, and that is why when they grew in the number they were called as the Janapadas. Okay, and in the upcoming era, okay, we will term them as Mahajanapadas. Okay, the 16 Mahajanapadas. Okay. Now, the early industries of the early Vedic period majorly had the cotton and the wool production. Okay, and that is why we'll see that weaving industry had been grown significantly. Okay, now there are no evidences of the trades with the external countries during the early Vedic period, but yes, the weaving industry was quite strong. Okay, after that, the carpeting industry also grew a lot. Okay, carpeting with respect to the chariots, plows, wagons, and the houses, and they were technically well equipped. Okay, why? Because there are some of the evidences at the end of the early Vedic period. At the end of the early Vedic period, we find that there is an emergence of the Iron Age, and that is why these people are technically well equipped. Before the iron, they used to have the wooden plows. Okay, the wooden plows. But once the Iron Age gets in, we find that the plows again were converted into the iron plows. Okay, so these are some of the evidences that we found from the literature. Okay, now the trades were majorly carried through the barter system. Okay, the food grains or the cow or the cattle were being exchanged in the form of currency. Okay, now the cattle were sort of the currency, pieces of the golds. Now this means the Nishka. Now this is the concept being or reflected in your Rig Vedic literatures. Okay, so Nishka is nothing but the gold coins. Okay, the gold coins which used to be exchanged or which used to be carried out during the transaction. Okay, so this were known as the Nishka. Okay, and the commerce was managed by the non-Aryan. Okay, and this caused the major pain. Okay,